Yes, welcome everyone. I'm Ingrid Collins, Associate State Director at AARP Florida. Thank you so much for joining us in what promises to be a very insightful conversation about the impact of Hurricane Maria on the Puerto Rican community on the island and also in the diaspora as we remember that fateful day that happened a full 3 years ago on September 20th, 2017. To everyone watching us, if you have any questions at all, please go ahead and add them to your chat. That way we can answer either along the way, we'll accumulate them and we'll answer all your questions. We just want to make sure that as you're thinking of it, go ahead and jot it down in the chat feature and we'll grab it from there. We'll be addressing the questions at the end. So now, without further ado, it is my true honor to introduce our panel today. Starting with Chris Majocha, President and CEO of You Do You Productions. He is also the director and the producer of the award-winning film Hurricane Maria and the Ame-Rican Dream. And notice the play on words there. I hope that you have all had a chance to see the documentary and feel all the feels that we all did as we watched this. If you have not, though, I do want to say that you still have time to either watch it yourself or invite your friends because it will be available through midnight this evening. So there's still a chance. So hi, Chris.
Hello, how are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for being with us and for the work that you did. I'll come back to you. Let me keep going and introduce the rest of our panel because also with us is Alex Diaz. Alex, for those of you who saw the documentary, is the person in the film. He and his family are featured in the documentary. Alex is also a comedian. He's a YouTube personality in the Puerto Rican community, and he's an entrepreneur in the food truck industry here in Florida. Hi, Alex.
Hello, Ingrid. Hello, everyone.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad that you're with us. And also, yes, thank you. And I want to also introduce two authors, María Padilla and Nancy Rosado. They are the co-authors of the book Tossed to the Wind, a book that captures the stories of the families who came to Central Florida in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria, just like the Diaz family. So I'll start with María. Hello, María.
Hello, how are you?
I am well. Thank you for being here. And Nancy Rosado. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much. So a little bit more about our authors. María is the former editor of La Prensa in Orlando, founding editor of El Sentinel, the Spanish language version of the Orlando Sentinel. And by the way, where I met María. She is currently the editor-in-chief and the founder of the online news platform, OrlandoLatino.com. Nancy Rosado is a retired NYPD sergeant whose disaster response experience includes 9/11, the Pulse nightclub, and Parkland shootings, as well as Hurricanes Katrina and Maria. As I understand it, Nancy, you are in La Isla del Encanto. You're at the moment in Puerto Rico, is that right?
That's correct.
And we wish we were there with you. I'm so glad that all of you were able to join us. And so let's get started with our questions. Chris, I'll start with you. Can you tell us a little bit more about what made you decide to do this documentary? How did this journey begin for you?
Really, it was in 2017, September 20th, when Hurricane Maria hit the island of Puerto Rico. And at the time, I was working a 9-to-5 job in a marketing role and helping kind of make advancements in Central Florida's diverse community. So I had a lot of connections in the Puerto Rican community, and just seeing the struggle that people here in Central Florida were going through to try to reach their families and their friends and just even get in contact was just heartbreaking to see. And then at the time, I was also writing some articles on LinkedIn about how businesses and nonprofits could be, could benefit from engaging with the newly displaced Puerto Ricans here in the continental U.S. And on LinkedIn, which is, a considerably or relatively professional network, in the comments of those articles, people were saying, well, why would we let these illegal immigrants into our country in the first place? Immigrants have no business being here. And For those of you who don't know, Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens, and it was just kind of heartbreaking to me to see the level of naivety and ignorance that just existed, and lack of education. And I was wondering, what can I do to try to advance that, or change that dialogue as a white male with white privilege here in the United States. What could I do to be an advocate for someone else? And that's when I actually quit my 9-to-5 job on a whim, and met Alex Diaz and his wonderful family, and we went to Puerto Rico and started filming, and didn't really know what was going to happen with it, and now here we are a couple of years later with a film that really tells a story, I think, of what one family went through out of many Maria stories, and just hoping to create a little bit more empathy and compassion and understanding of just what the Puerto Rican people have had to go through after Maria.
Yeah, and what an amazing project, and I think that you really did humanize in the way that you showed the struggles, certainly during the storm and the immediate aftermath. And so happy to have Alex with us. So Alex, I'm curious. I want to hear from you. Tell us how is your family doing right now? And as in the intro, I mentioned you're in the food truck business now. So tell us about how your family is, how the food truck business is going for you, and where are you right now?
Well, we're still trying to manage to get along in this new system that we live right now, because we weren't used to be living in the United States. We liked it. It's not that bad. So we're having a great time here. Me and my family. We also miss where Nancy is right now. She earlier on she showed us the palms and the sea, and I was like, but I know that someday I'll be able to be back at home. But we are here and just trying to, as the documentary say, live the American dream. And we're just, anywhere you are in the world, you still have to work, and that's what we're doing. We're working very hard to we now have a food truck business, and today actually there's a radio station which is the most popular one here in the Tampa area where I live, and I just got. They just told me that I won the as best food truck in Tampa Bay. So I am celebrating today.
Right. Yes, congratulations. That's awesome.
It's my second year winning it, and that's awesome. For me, it's a way of saying that when you work hard for it, and even though I don't know how to cook, my wife is the one, she's the star there. But when you work hard for it, it pays off. So that's what we're doing, and we're having a great time here.
That is awesome, and what a wonderful story. And I love that about you, that you always had that thread throughout your through the documentary, as you were sharing your experience thus far. You always went back to that point about how you work for it, and you get the rewards of that. So how gratifying it must be for you to win these awards. Well deserved, I am sure. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But I'd like you to look back a little bit more. So when you think about those early struggles, and when you first arrived in Central Florida, if you're looking back now, what were some of the most difficult challenges that you faced as you were transitioning to living here in the U.S. mainland?
Well, first of all, the language barrier, it's a huge thing for us as Puerto Ricans, because our main language is Spanish. Also, one of the other things that I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, so the rent in Puerto Rico maximum is like $600 a month, and when you get to live here, it's when you see the numbers, it's like, what? So you get a little scared, and but then you get used to it, and I think that one of I would say the language and the way of doing business here, it's way so much different than the way we do it in the island. But as I always say, I don't like to see the struggles. I just love to see they just think that I have to change, and I don't like to see it as a bad thing, but as a positive thing, so I can change my mind and go forward with it and trying to change it. Like if I would go like, oh man, I cannot do this. Look at the rent. It's $1,600 a rent here. Oh, what I'm going to do? Maybe I was going to be back in Puerto Rico and putting my girls back in where there was nothing. So I try to look at the positive way. So, okay, so if this is the game, I have to learn how to play it. And I'm still learning how to play it. But I think we're going the right path. But I would say, to answer your question, the struggles, the biggest struggles were the language barrier and the way because the people always say like the American dream and stuff. And once you get here and once you live here and you start missing your friends and your family, that's when it hits you. It's like, oh, is this like a real dream coming true, or like you got to work for it and work very hard for it. And I'll say those things are the struggles, if I may say something. Missing my family, my island, and the language barrier. I think that.
Yeah, but as in typical fashion, with the can-do and hard work pays off attitude that we hear from Alex, I hear you saying, I'm not going to call it a struggle, not even an obstacle. These were just like minor bumps in the road, but it is very, very nice to hear that you're doing well and that you're winning awards and being recognized. You know, that is good for you. So I'm going to move on and ask a question of our authors today. So I'm going to start with you, Maria. Share with us, what was it that led you, Nancy, to be compelled to document these stories and write this book?
I think Nancy and I were interested from the beginning about what was happening, particularly in Orlando, because as you know, Orlando was sort of like the grand central station of the migration, and people were leaving Puerto Rico by the thousands, and usually in pretty bad shape because, as we all know, Puerto Rico suffered for a year or more and is still suffering. But in the immediate aftermath, there was no electricity, there was no water, there was no food in the supermarkets, you could barely get cash out of your ATM. So there was a host of really very serious problems. But as we saw people coming here in Orlando, I think we each sort of perked up and started talking about it because we're good friends. And it was like, oh my God, if you've been to the airport and you see the folks coming in and how the state had to establish resource centers in order to direct people to get their stuff done, whether it was a Florida license plate or transportation or housing or any number of things in order to set yourself up once you were here, because many people came with nothing. That became, I think, a real big interest of ours in order to document what was going on, because we sensed that this was historical.
Right. And it absolutely was. And Nancy, I wanted to ask you, because you certainly have extensive experience in disaster response, and thank you for your service, by the way. And I also know that you've stayed in touch with these families. And in fact, there was an event here for the anniversary this past weekend here in Orlando. So what are you hearing from these families? Are they established? Do they feel established? And how are they doing?
So the backtracking to what Maria was saying a second ago, a big part of why we did this was growing up Puerto Rican is an experience, right? Although I grew up here, my heart and everything is tied to the island. So we got to talking, and I'm a mental health professional. Everybody talks about the fact that I was a cop, but I'm a clinical social worker. And the conversations with Maria really did center a lot around, the pain that these people were suffering, and how do you adapt to this crisis and all the rest of that. And the need to capture the stories as early as possible. Because with time, your memory corrupts and tries to fix it all and make it into this nice, neat package. And it was not a nice, neat package. And some are still struggling. COVID didn't do us any help because many of them wound up working in the hotel industry. in restaurants and so on and so forth, and have lost their jobs, and they're just hanging on. But this is the amazing thing about our people, right? Amazingly resilient. We bounce back or try to bounce or cling as hard as we can to stay on our feet. And hopefully most of us, my experience is that most of us do make it one way or another. Is it ideal? No. Is it a happy ending and fairy tale story? No. But this is who we are. We are not strangers to struggles. We're not strangers to working it out. So what I've learned from the families that I've kept in contact with is how they've, okay, it's not working out for me right here in Orlando. Let me try St. Cloud. Let me go to Kissimmee. Let me shift until I reach where I need to be. And that to me is all part of resilience. We ran support groups for them. We did, I worked for UCF Restores. We do a lot of trauma counseling. And we were right there with these folks, giving them whatever support they needed emotionally so that they could survive this other storm that they were experiencing.
Right. And so, and Nancy, I know that you're dialing in from Puerto Rico. And so I know I'm seeing a couple of comments that it was a little bit hard to hear what you said. So we're going to get you on the phone in a second. And in the meantime, I'm going to switch over to Maria to ask a question of the families that you talked to and of the stories that you heard. Is there one that particularly resonated for you, or one that just kind of stuck with you?
There were so many amazing stories that we were in many ways privileged to hear, because we knocked on doors and people didn't know who we were, and they were kind enough to open the door and let us in and then talk to us about, probably one of the most, if not the most painful experience of their lives. Because to go to kind of Alex's point earlier, it's not like you were planning on making this move for an entire year, and therefore you were putting, all the steps in place. This just happened. Hurricane Maria came and literally blew your house down or blew down all your infrastructure. And all of a sudden you find yourself, feet first, hopefully, in another place where, in, for instance, Alex's case, the language became a real issue for him, which I'm glad to hear he has overcome. So it's hard to pick favorites in a way, but there were just people who had parents who either had Alzheimer's. There was a woman who had a young daughter who was and still is, a cancer survivor. There was an older woman who Nancy and I each adored. She was just so resilient and so up and so strong. And one of the things that we remembered about her name was Rosa Ortiz. And she was one of the people, unfortunately, who lived in a hotel until she was able to find permanent housing. So she started out in Kissimmee, but she became active and activist. Once she was very much a part of the people at the motel who were kind of just sharing resources, sharing information, finding out how they can, get from point A to B, how to do this or how to do the other. And at the end of our interview, I will never forget this. She asked us all to stand. There were only, a couple of us, me, Nancy, and another person. She asked us to stand. We did. And by the time we left there, I think we were all in tears. We were just all in tears. It was an amazing moment.
And so I think you cut out for a second. I heard you say that she asked you all to stand, and then say again what you said after that.
She asked us all to stand and pray. Which we did. And that moment was such an amazing, emotional moment for each of us that by the time we were done, we were practically all in tears.
Oh, I'm sure. And it's got to be difficult because, if you think about all of the collective experience that so many people were having at the same time in such an impactful way and in such a visible way, it just really, it hit home for people just watching on television, let alone those of you who were directly connected to these families and such. So I'm going to check back in with Nancy and just make sure if we can hear you better now, Nancy. Just want to check in.
Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask you the same question. Of all the folks that you met, was there anything that particularly stuck with you? And I'm sure in your line of work already, you hear a lot of stories. And how do you, so it's a two-part question, right? Is there any story that sticks with you? But also, how do you, doing the work that you do, deal with that? Or how do you either separate from it or put it in another place as you live your life? Because I can imagine it can become, a lot to bear.
Well, in terms of stories that stuck to me, I have to say each one of them was very unique. And so each one of them stuck. What we understood was that these people were gifting us a moment in their life when they were hurt in every which way possible. They expressed their pain. They expressed their frustration. They expressed the whole fear of not knowing. There wasn't a one except maybe our last two interviews, which were really of people here that are from Orlando and helped. So I think what was important was not only that we were gifted these stories, but more so that we validated in sitting with them and telling them that it was for a book, and telling them that their story was not going to go away. It was something that was going to live inside of them and the world wouldn't know. It made them feel like somebody cared, like somebody was making something out of what someone else may think is just nonsense, or maybe even they had started to devalue it. But it was really interesting to sit with them, and we would leave and we would sit in the car and we'd talk about what we just heard and we'd debrief each other. So, as a mental health person, that's what I'm trained to do, right? We train to, usually we're under supervision. We usually have someone to bounce it off of or to help us correct maybe what we said to our patients, so on and so forth. But with Maria and I, we've been friends for years, so it was a very natural process to debrief each other afterwards and try to scramble for resources in case we could add something more to what they had gifted us. We could give them back something so that they could keep hanging on.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. So it does. So the second part of that was about you, and so I'm hearing you say how this is your profession, but again, might as well put on the cape, right? Because we all can be in awe of that kind of work. And in this example, as we talk about the families and the people who were affected by Hurricane Maria, but you do this every day, and it dawns on me too that thinking about the reunion on Sunday for the anniversary. I mean, what was that like? I mean, I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, but we were having a little bit of a sound issue. So I want to make sure that we hear you, and that immediate, kind of reflection that you had in that moment, seeing people who 3 years later, right? And we do have some wonderful stories like Alex and his family, but I can imagine that there are, real struggles still happening.
Very much so. I think the beauty of the meeting was that it was pouring rain. I don't know if you recall how the weather was that day, but it was a torrential downpour. I mean, I had to go home and change everything. I was drenched to the bone. And yet they came, and they kept coming. What had happened in the hotels was that the families were born, chosen family. They had this really wonderful opportunity to see each other again and see how they had moved along, how things had gotten better. Now, Maria and I did not run into folks that were in the book, except for Father Jose, who appears at the end of the book. He wonderful Episcopalian priest that helps so many people.
Yes.
But it was being witness to a lot of political figures coming out in that reign and sitting for it and sharing with them. They felt important. They felt connected. And I heard some conversations that I hate to admit I eavesdropped. But I did hear some conversations of, oh, espérate, this, I did this and this helped, for those who had actually moved away. Remember that they were in those hotels for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And it gave them this one made rice and the other one made beans and the other one made steak and the other one, well, some kind of meat anyway. But,
and you
the
share.
sharing experience, it was what built family and helped them scramble for resources. The joy of seeing each other again was just, you can help but be touched by it also.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And so, and I want to come back to Alex too, because as a parent and a grandmother now myself, I was, of course, very touched by, just the coverage that the documentary gave to your daughters and how they were faring. And so I'm wondering, with now present day pandemic, or, having to possibly learn from home, or what is going on with them? How are they doing and how are they feeling?
Well, as two teenagers, they're not as happy as I was when I was a teenager, because they not get to hang out with their parents. So all day long. But I always tell them, like, this is the new reality, so you got to get used to it and go for it. And like my oldest daughter, well, both of them, they don't like homeschooling at all. And because they like to hang out with their friends and be like presential. I don't know how to say it in English. Very good, but still. But being in the classroom with the teacher and their friends and stuff, so they miss that a lot. Like I tell them, like we went through Maria. This is nothing. Like, well, it's not that it's nothing. I mean, but like Maria was a huge thing for us. It changed our life like 180 degrees. That now these days with the pandemic, it's like, okay, I think I know how to manage myself with this. Like I'm here with my family. At least I have power. I have electricity. I can go and get food, and there is available food that I can buy, and so it is a struggle, but not as for me, and I'm sure there are so many other people that maybe think the opposite that I am saying right now. But for me, it's like Maria was bigger than what's happening right now as with this pandemic. I don't know if I'm right, but it's just my
but it's you. It's what happened to you, right? And I think the word that comes to my mind as I'm hearing you describe that kind of thought that you're trying to convey to your daughters, it's resilience. Because if you think about it, that this was a very, very impactful, traumatic, you name it, what other kind of adjective you can throw in there, event that happened. And collectively, that's what really speaks to the strength of the community, the strength of these families, the strength of the heroes, like the rest of the people on this call, like me and Maria and Nancy and all those other people organizations as well, who jumped in to try to help. And it makes me think of, even in my childhood growing up in New York City, nothing special going on, and yet people were still sharing food. People always shared. One mother was everybody's mother. Didn't have to be your mother watching you. Somebody's mother was watching you and telling your mom what you were doing. So, that sense of community and that belonging really translates. And it's one of the things that even in times of trouble, right, even more so perhaps, that it shines through. And it really is, a wonderful story to tell, and why we're happy. At ARP, we talk about, well, how can we serve the community? And we want our communities whole, and we want to support each other. And sometimes what we can do best is, create a platform to have conversations like this. And that's very gratifying to me. And I get to meet amazing people like all of you. So Thank you so much. I'm going to just check in real quick and see if we've had any questions, because I want to make sure that if we have anybody waiting. So we do have a question from Steph. It's a resident of Celebration, which is a residential community near Disney parks, which abuts Kissimmee. See this as a far harder struggle for many. So, any comments on that? Of course, in this area, we know that Osceola County is now officially over half of Hispanic and Latino residents in this area. So, are any of the panelists want to chime in on that? Are you seeing specific pockets of continuing struggles?
I think that it depends on the person and the resources that they have or that they brought to the crisis. Because one of the things that we did notice as we were interviewing many people for the book is obviously the more resources they had. And resources could take many, many forms. It's not just a matter of dollars and cents. It could be, your education level. It could be the family that you have here. It could be friends. It could be a bunch of other things that somehow came together to help you in this struggle. So a lot of what happened depended on the resources you had or you brought or you were able to tap into once you were here. To go back to the Sunday event in that downpour, one of the things that I really did love about that event was many of the survivors that were there were operating their own businesses. A number of them had their own businesses, working from home or doing any number of other things. And I thought, wow, that is really, really very entrepreneurial and also showing a great deal of initiative. So they were not going to kind of stay and leave things the way they were. They were seeking to improve.
Right. And that,
I also think, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex. No, go ahead.
That every person, every family, it has a whole new story, and we all had a different story, a different perspective, and so it's going to be different for every family, for every person that went through Hurricane Maria. So you're not always going to get the exact answer for that. And with the struggle part and stuff, because everyone is just a new. Everyone is different, so that's what I think about it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And Nancy, what do you think?
Honestly, this is going to be a struggle for many, right? It's going to continue to be a rough roller coaster ride for some folks. A lot of people came here and they didn't have the support system. And we are people accustomed to a support system. If your aunt wasn't up the block, your cousin was. If your grandparents weren't around the corner, then you had your uncle. There was always this network.
Right.
And it has you come into a place where you're starting from ground zero with a lot of hopes and a lot of dreams. And when you start hearing everyone around you doing this, doing that, and you're not there, it's pretty heartbreaking. And it becomes that's where struggles start overlapping. Those who came with medical issues, for example, I'm watching this now. We came here, this is the land of all things possible, right? Everybody talks about the mainland. Well, my personal point of view is that this is not the mainland. Puerto Rico's the mainland. You are now someone else's mainland. But you have these hopes and these dreams people have painted for you. And when you get here, it's not exactly what you thought it would be. And so in adapting and in struggling and scrambling for these answers, it can take an emotional toll on you. For those who, like I started to mention, thinking of one mom in particular came with her daughter who had cancer, and they got her out on a humanitarian flight, and then thank God she's done really, really well up until now.
Oh no!
And so the struggle, that she's going to pass away is a fact. That this is painful is a fact, and that mom is got layers and layers of issues going on right now. is a fact. But, again, this is something we lived through, and something that if she has the right support system, she's going to survive, because we know what's coming, right?
Right.
And like I said, this is a wonderful community. We still manage to scramble and hold each other up, and maybe it's not the prettiest picture, but we do make it.
And I can't pass up asking you this question, since we said you're in Puerto Rico right now. What have you felt from the residents there? Are they kind of still reeling? I mean, because we know the conditions have not improved as much as some people might think they have. But I mean, even with the constant threat of another storm, another hurricane, I mean, another earthquake, I mean, there have been so many things.
When I flew in, I intentionally drove through Piñones, not just for the food. There's good food in that area. But I had actually, when I came 1 month after Maria, that's the route I took. And I took pictures along the way of the destruction. And it pained me to see so many businesses, somebody's dream, still in that same condition. The people are carrying on, right? They're adapting, because that's what we do. We're human. It doesn't matter if you're from here, from wherever you are, you adapt. But are you adapting to something good, or are you adapting to something subpar? Are you at a worse place than you would have been had Maria not hit? When talking to, I always talk to the servers. They tell you everything. I heard so much. Well, we're getting by. We're getting by. Well, at least we're still selling. I mean, we're cooking different, but we're doing it. Yeah. I mean, the hotel I'm staying at is a pretty nice hotel. It's empty. It's empty. I got upgraded from it. Just picture how business is here. When I get upgraded from a 1-bedroom to a 3-bedroom, and it's only me and someone else. So, what I've done is just invite a family to come stay, because it's a break. Again, it's that whole thing of, it's a ghost town here right now.
Yeah.
Where the street, you have a curfew. Are things the same? When you have a curfew at 10 o'clock, you have to be off the street.
Right.
If you walk into any store, you have to have your mask on. That's a good thing. But you're assailed with this alcohol product that they spray all over you. Usually have young people doing this, and
disinfectant shower.
Exactly. But we're laughing about it, but this is not normal.
No, it isn't.
We're not near normalcy. But we've adapted, or we've accepted. And human beings only adapt and accept for so long, and then they rebel.
Right.
So,
and then the littlest of things also then, if maybe in different circumstances would have been manageable perhaps, and then all of a sudden it's that little thing that was the last thing on the on your back.
Straw that broke the camel's back, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. It becomes a trigger. It becomes a trigger that releases emotions that you've been kind of trying to sit on and keep control of for a long time.
Exactly.
I applaud Alex in every which way for what he's done. And, he's got that spirit. He's also has a loving family to work for and to support him.
Right.
So I see how he is who he is. I know a lot of the folks that came are not there. A lot of people, that live here are not in that situation. They're not there either. They're just getting by. Is survival fair?
Yeah, and we can't forget that. Right, and it's different for everyone. So I think that kind of came through in some of the comments that, Chris, don't know if you had other families that you had talked to or considered highlighting as the feature of your documentary. But did you already know Alex Diaz and his family, or how did you guys meet?
I did not actually. Again, I was working a 9-to-5 job at the time, and one of the account managers at one of our client partners, I mentioned to her that I was looking to do this documentary and just asking people if they knew anyone who had come over after the storm, and she was like, "Oh, we have this new employee who just came over 2 months after Maria. So I'd love to have you meet him." And so I sat down with Alex and his wife, Leda, and then I interviewed probably Alex was actually the very first one I interviewed, and then interviewed about 24 other families afterwards, and just kept coming back to Alex and not to negate anybody else's story, because
Right.
and I think, and Alex, mentions this multiple times throughout the documentary as well, that this is just his story.
Sure.
And everybody has a different experience, and there are people in vastly different circumstances, all across the board. But what struck me about Alex and his family was really the mentality, and not to negate anybody else's, but after
Right.
Maria, and certainly understandably, there was just a lot of despair, and kind of very like depressive feelings. I mean, it's after what
Understandably.
yeah,
Right.
certainly.
Yeah.
And that is a very viable story to tell as well. And certainly the book Tossed to the Wind, covers so many different stories that are heartbreaking, and some are triumphant. And Alex just had this unique perspective of, well, this happened, and as terrible as this is, I have to keep waking up every day and putting one foot in front of the other and fighting for my family. And as kind of just that energy or order that he was putting off just had a feeling of hope to it. And I was thinking that if I felt that as somebody who is not Puerto Rican, and I could feel that connection of just like, wow, this person is inspiring and finding hope in the worst of times, that's a story I think that might translate to others as well, where maybe in their vastly different circumstances might find a little glimpse of hope in their lives.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so I'm going to shift to Alex then, because one of the questions that came up was, what about your family? And do you guys still think about going back to the island at some point? Or do you feel like this is your home now here in Florida?
Oh, I'm gonna answer that real quick. Oh, yes, we do. It's our now I have when I grew up, I had the American dream. Now I have the Puerto Rican dream. I miss so much my island. I never thought when Chris we first met, which my English was worse than it is right now, and I apologize for that.
You're fine.
But I never thought I was gonna live in the U.S. I always see the United States as a vacation place, and let's go to New York some couple of weeks, and that's it, and get back. And I love to travel, but I never see myself living in the United States. Now that I'm here, I'm grateful for it. I like it. I love the way that we live right now, but I miss so much my island. I really, I don't know why. I don't know what it. Some people are like, what's in the island that you miss so much? I don't know, but there's something about that space right there that I miss my people. I miss my
home.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a thing. I don't know how to explain it, but I miss so much my island. And I think maybe not to, if it's not to live for good, I'll say I probably gonna go maybe 4 to 5 months just to energize myself. Yeah. So to answer your question, yes, I will definitely go back to my island. I love my people. I love my island. I just I keep on looking at Nancy's son hitting her face, and it looks just.
She's gonna give us a little peek now.
Oh please, Nancy, don't make me hate you.
Look at that.
Homesick.
You're gonna love me, Alex, no matter what.
Alex is gonna have to take a vacation. Oh my gosh, he's too busy working. I know. So, but I want to ask Maria too. So from your perspective, and certainly as a writer, I mean, how do you see this diaspora, and what do you see on the near horizon with the situation the way it is? I mean, we certainly know that this is very, very heavy stuff. And we know that things are not to the level that maybe people expected that it would be, but then natural disasters happen and they continue to happen. And the island just has been affected by several things in a row. Before you can fix one thing, something else happens. And then, it's kind of one step forward and maybe a couple steps back. So what do you see in Central Florida? I mean, as the general mood and as the community goes forward?
Well, I think one of the most astonishing pieces of news that I have been reading lately speaks to Alex's point here, which is that people want to go back. And not only do they want to go back to the island, but many have. And according to the recent census information that comes out like once a year when they do updates, both reports here in Florida and reports in Puerto Rico say that about half or more of the people who came immediately in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria have actually returned to the island. Now, we know that in Puerto Rico, we have what is known in Spanish as el vaivén, which is people come, they go, they come, they go. And in English sociological terms, that's known as the return migration or circular migration. But then it would happen this fast is, to me, absolutely amazing. I did not expect to hear 3 years after Maria that most of the people have actually gone back to Puerto Rico who came to Florida. And just to put it in perspective, there was anywhere between 43 to 50,000 people who came to Florida, not talking about any other state, directly from Puerto Rico after the hurricane. So that most of that number, up to 50,000 people, have now returned to the island, I think really speaks to, the desire to be back. They miss it. They miss their family. They miss the support system, as Nancy also spoke about. They miss a whole bunch of stuff. And no matter what they're doing here, there's always that dream in the back of your mind that you're going to go back.
And it does speak to that sense of like what is missing, right? You can make a home and out of necessity or out of emergency, but nothing's going to replace what you really call home, right? The real home.
The one thing Maria and I experienced over and over again during the interviews, Maria would tactfully and at the right moment ask, do you miss home? Would you go home? And the tears would start. After a while, I started thinking she wanted to make them cry, right? I mean, it was more so, she was asking a legitimate question, and it was always mi tierra, mi terreno, mi familia, and Anna, my heart is buried there. You would hear everything. And these are people that were in pain. They were, and it was just like when you asked the question, they stopped cold, right, Maria? It was something
absolutely. They stopped cold.
I can see that, and I can feel it. I mean, I'm just hearing you tell secondhand, and I can feel like, oh my gosh, what you must have felt in that moment.
Yes. So it's a tough moment for us to hear it because of course the tears would really come out. Because no matter what they were doing and how they were trying to kind of survive that moment or that particular hurricane, I mean, they missed Puerto Rico tremendously.
I'm sure. So I just want to ask then, with the success of your book, are you ladies collaborating? Any new projects on the horizon?
I'll let Nancy answer that.
if it's not a secret.
We get into a lot of mayhem and mischief together, so you stand by. One never knows, right?
One never knows. Okay, what about you, Chris?
Actually talking with Nancy about a couple other different stories for Puerto Rico. This one certainly was a Hurricane Maria specific story that needed to be told. But there are some other ones that are, just more cultural or even things that have to do with different people or different, types of backgrounds or experiences of people who came over after Maria. So just a couple different things working there, and just some other documentaries in the works, trying to do what I can to help help make this world a better place.
You're giving us a great perspective. And so I want to thank everyone for chatting with us today. Before I let everybody go, though, I do want to tell our viewers that we have a surprise. So we want to share the Toss to the Wind book with you. And so after this event, for those of you who've registered, you're going to get a post-event email that is going to ask you just to kind of give us your feedback. And in that, if you reply with your name and address, you will get a copy of the book sent to you while supplies last. So please be one of the first to, come right back to us with your name and address so that we can get that out to you, because we do want everyone the same way that we shared the documentary, because we thought certainly it's a story that needs to be told, and unflinching look at a very severe event that happened that affected so many people. And as well as our authors, talking about these real stories and other people who have been affected and continue to be to this day. So it's just a really important story. So I just want to thank all of you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Ingrid, for having us.
Of course. And thank you, Chris.
Absolutely.
You've all been lovely. I appreciate all of you so much. And thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, Nancy, Alex, Maria.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.